Back, you're watching The Full View. Well, the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution has welcomed the judgment ordering former President Jacob Zuma to personally pay for his legal costs on criminal cases he faced in the last 10 years.
Political parties have also welcomed this ruling, saying it's a landmark judgment.
The EFF described the ruling as a victory that protects and saves taxpayers' money. The court upheld the application by the DA and EFF to set aside an early agreement authorizing state funding for Zuma's defense in criminal cases. In a statement, the ANC said it respects the rule of the law and the country's justice system. The ruling party says it would study the merits of the case before commenting on the merits of the judgment. The ICDP also welcomed the judgment as a warning to future president that there will always be consequences for misusing taxpayers' money.
It's going to be between 15 and 30 million rands that he will have to pay, the money that has been spent the last 10 years in all the cases that he had. So the public must be aware that you get into power, behave, use resources that belong to the state very well. Public money should be used with care, because if you use it on yourself, even after 10 years, you'll have to pay back every cent of it.
Investigation. Meanwhile, Kesek says the years of Zuma avoiding his day in court finally caught up with him.
This is a very important judgment that really exposes the manner in which Jacob Zuma went around trying to defend and avoid having his day in court for over a decade. In the course of its judgment, the court recounted all of the cases that came before court, how many counsel were employed by Zuma in all of those matters, and referred on more than one occasion about the luxury that Mr. Zuma took it upon himself to enjoy at taxpayers' expense.
Pay back the money. Some political parties are already proposing a bill to prevent presidents abusing their office.
Work to be done.
Freedom Front Plus says it will introduce a private member's bill to Parliament after next year's election. The bill will strictly govern the use of public funds for litigation involving the state. Montlengane Dipoko, SABC News, Johannesburg.
We're joined on the line by EFF National Spokesperson, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Dr. Ndlozi, thank you for joining us. So you think this sets the right precedent?
Thank you very much, and good evening to the listeners. Please repeat your question.
I said, do you agree this sets the right precedent?
Do I agree that
it sets a good precedent? Are you happy with the judgment as the EFF?
Yes, indeed. We're very happy. In fact, we welcome the judgment. I mean, as a matter of principle here is that nobody, merely because they hold public office, should take taxpayers' money to pay for legal costs on things that have to do with their personal affairs and have nothing to do with the public office for which they've been elected to serve. And that has been the principle which has driven us since our interaction with these matters and in this case. So we're very happy, and it sets a proper precedent for the rest of all public representatives and people who are in government, particularly politicians in the form of ministers and the head of state, that you're not going to just engage in questionable conduct hoping that you'll take, taxpayers' money as legal fees or legal payment, and not be very considerate, as it were, about how you act. And that's why we're very happy with the judgment.
He not only has to pay taxpayers' money back, but opposition parties who spent on legal fees, which I believe includes yourselves. So the question is, do you ever think you'll get any of that money back?
Well, what is the main celebration here really for us is that moving forward, nobody's going to do what Jacob Zuma did. So, of course, there must be a pursuit of getting and recovering whatever money that has been spent. But moving forward, we've clarified once and for all, and that's important for the rest of those who are still in public office and who are still going to be in public office. And as to whether the money comes back, Of course, you can't ask, stone from water from stone. But whatever money that has to be recovered, it must. What we celebrate in the main is that moving forward, it will never happen again.
Is the EFF not at all worried that you could be scuppering your own members? You are part of local governments already. You have national aspirations to be the ruling party. You could say this judgment says that anyone accused of corruption has to pay themselves, whether they are guilty or not.
Absolutely. As long as the conduct for which you are being accused has nothing to do with the public office, has nothing to do with your immediate responsibilities, and the cases of Mr. Zuma had nothing to do with his responsibilities as a president. But if they have something to do directly to do with the responsibility of public office, there are grounds that the state must be able to pay because you are acting on its behalf. So we're happy, and we think that it will bring a lot of discipline to the rest of the generations that are going to come.
Dr. Ndlozi, can I change the subject and talk about the political climate now? Because something happened today. There is a list circulating. It seems to come from Facebook, from a post by someone who seems to be an EFF member, sort of naming the names of journalists and outlining the enemies of the EFF, doing the rounds today. Do you condemn that?
I'm not aware of that. There are a lot of, social media, there are a lot of people who act on behalf of all types of organizations, maybe precisely to tarnish their images, maybe precisely to have a situation where our reputation is, discredited by journalists, and they're taking advantage of the obvious objective disagreements that we've been having with journalists. So I can't barge for this. So the verification of those facts is important. However, we've been on public record that we don't have our dispute with journalists has nothing to do with physical violence, an intellectual dispute. And we have said this in our own platforms, we've repeated it even on the SABC platform on countless occasions. Whoever takes a different approach without the policy or the constitutional structures of the EFF communicating, they are acting on their own. But I suspect that those people are not EFF members, but the EFF members always take the key from what the organization officially communicates.
However, EFF leaders have named journalists. This list is an echo of the people, the organizations that have been named, sometimes publicly. Don't you believe that that is putting journalists in danger?
No, not at all. Journalists write in their name. To name a person who already writes in their name, who already has a face on their Facebook account is not a danger. There's one thing to name you. There's one thing to say this is the street you live in, this is the car that you drive, and so on and so forth. So what were we saying when we were naming them? Is so that you are able to identify their accounts and you are able to follow them up in relation to the arguments that you are making and be able to speak back and mark them on social media, because our concern is an intellectual engagement. So we say be careful of these people on social media, follow them so that you are able to challenge everything that they say. So if it was about threats and physical harassment, we were going to do those things of saying these are their number plates, these are their addresses, let them be fetched so that they can be physically confronted. So we didn't do that because they write in newspapers in their names, they are on social media in their names, they are on TV in their names. So we're saying to our forces, let us mark these people, because these people have declared themselves as ideological opponents of the EFF. And 100% of those people that we named are no longer practicing journalism. They are columnists. They are opinion makers. They campaign on the pages of opinions, not news. That's why we name them, because they are no longer active journalists on the ground.
Okay,
they are opinion makers.
We can debate this because this is about defining journalism, but you are outlining a very rational argument, but is it good enough? Because we saw someone just criticizing the EFF at a Vodacom event, and the next thing, Vodacom shops were looted and damaged. So obviously, some of your supporters have a hard time determining that line between sort of criticism using words and other forms of violence.
There were no instructions in relation to Vodacom. There was not even an official statement of the EFF on Vodacom. And as soon as we realized that, we sat in a meeting with Vodacom to resolve issues. So we acted, and we acted promptly. So the two situations are actually not connected. There was no naming of Vodacom. There was no official statement on Vodacom. There was no official program. Where there was an official program, by the way, is H&M, which had called people barbaric. So, which had used images, I meant to say, of black people and called them monkeys. So there was a deliberate program of direct action. And where instances like that occur, you are definitely going to intervene as the leadership that that's not what we mean. But I'm saying on this one, I'm not speaking on this platform for the first time, by the way. Even the president of the EFF outside Peace of Black Star clarified that when I'm saying these names, I'm not talking about physical violence. I am speaking about intellectual engagement. Why do we name them? It's because you must go read the things that they say so that you respond to them.
All right, let's leave it there. That's assuming that everyone only engages intellectually. That is not the case. If you look at what happened with Vodacom, that was EFF National Spokesperson Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi.